Hello, this is memory part two. Let's talk about amnesia and interferences. So first of all, why do we forget? One reason is simply called decay theory. Decay is just theoretical. It simply means that our memories fade over time due to neural connections. I mean, think about like you learn something in class and then you try to do the quizzes a month later. Sometimes you're not going to remember everything. That's decay theory. It's nothing complicated about that. All right, moving right along. All right, you need to know the difference between these two. Okay. Okay, so you've got two kinds of amnesia. And here, there's more kinds, but here you've got anterograde amnesia, which is when you cannot form new memories, like Dory the fish, 10-second Tom, okay, from the movie 50 First Dates. It's when you have hippocampal damage and you cannot form new information. Hi, my name's Tom. Oh, we haven't met. My name's Tom. That's anterograde amnesia. Retrograde amnesia is the inability to remember past information. Retro past. Retro past. So if you don't remember who you are, you don't remember where you grew up, you don't remember who your family is, you don't remember who your husband is, that's retrograde amnesia. Both of these are caused by brain damage. Okay? So getting into a car accident and you don't remember your name, that's retrograde. All right, moving right along. So 51st Dates, it's just a cheesy little movie. It's about Drew Barrymore's character wakes up every morning thinking that it's a year ago. She cannot form new memories. Dory the Fish, Memento, Christopher Nolan's first movie. These are three examples of anterograde amnesia. Retrograde amnesia, I'm not sure if this is a good example, but if you cannot remember the past, think of somebody on a soap opera who doesn't remember who they are. Now, Jason Bourne may not be the best example because his was caused by trauma, I think. And if it's caused by psychological trauma, that's a different kind of amnesia. That's called dissociative amnesia, which is not caused by brain damage. All right, try this question. The answer is, so he can't form new memories, so we're going to call this anterograde amnesia. He's 10-second Tom. Okay? All right. If you said A, dissociative amnesia is caused by trauma, psychological trauma. Anterograde amnesia is caused by brain damage. Okay? All right, moving right along. All right, which one of these is an example of retrograde amnesia? All right, I'll give you a hint. Make sure that your answer is actually amnesia and not just a failure to encode. All right, the answer is D. That is an example of retrograde amnesia. C would be anterograde amnesia. A and B are just failures to encode. A and B are not amnesia. All right, moving right along. All right, remember in the consciousness chapter, we talked about consolidation theory, saying that dreaming serves the purpose of consolidating memories. Consolidation is simply the conversion of short-term memory into long-term memory. Now, how do you consolidate? By sleeping and dreaming, by repetition, by making the information meaningful to you. That's how you consolidate memories. Okay? Right. All right, moving right along. Okay, not an AP question, but if decay theory is correct, the answer is C. It's just forgetting over time. That's what decay is. Okay. All right, so when you have amnesia, You still remember basic facts like the sun rises in the east. You remember that, but you may not remember your name. You may not remember certain biographical events of your life. So this question would have been better earlier in the lesson, but the answer is D. Semantic definitions of words, fact memory. Episodic memory is the memory of certain events in your life. When you have amnesia, you may not remember events of your life, but you still remember how to, do your procedural memories. You still remember basic facts, like what year it is. Okay, but first you'll have to unlock your device. All right, infantile amnesia. So think of it, and let's do semantic encoding. Amnesia, the inability to forget, to remember, okay? Infantile, infant. So do you remember breastfeeding when you were 1? Do you remember getting your diaper changed? No. That's what infantile amnesia is. Okay? That's it. If you just encode it semantically, the word kind of defines itself. Okay? We generally don't remember anything before our ability to speak language. That's why girls have an earlier first memory than boys, because girls have better language skills as children. They speak better and earlier than boys. Retrieval cues. So let's say you have amnesia and you don't remember a lot of your episodic memories. You don't remember your name or anything. Try retrieval cues like pictures, videos, photos, smells. Boy, do smells trigger memories. Come back to this high school in 10 years and you will smell and you'll be like, oh, wow, I remember that smell. Okay. When you're doing a multiple choice question, all the wrong answer, all you're looking for the right answer. Those are retrieval cues. Okay. Hints to remember. All right. Priming, giving hints to remember, meaning showing photographs, taking them places of familiarity. That's what priming is. Okay, moving right along. All right. All right, read that. The answer is retrieval cues. The pictures are retrieval cues. All right. Can you name the 7 dwarfs off the top of your head? I know it may not be the best example, but okay. But if you can remember something without any kind of priming, kind of like an FRQ, you don't have hints, we call that recall. Okay? When you don't have any hints to go by, you just got to remember it. That's called recall, like on a fill in the blank. Now, if I ask you to pick them out of a list, that's different. Picking them out of a list, that's called recognition. Recognition is much easier than recall. Just like multiple choice is much easier than the FRQ. Here's the answer to the question. All right, so write this down. So recall is remembering without priming, fill in the blank, or just me calling on you. Recognition is when I give you hints, like which one of these is the answer, like a multiple choice. Okay, moving right along. So as you can see, if you look at a chart, recognition, people recall stuff much easier with recognition than recall. Just like I have lots of students who could do multiple choice all day long, but if I run into them at the mall and go, what part of the brain does blah, 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 that's recall, and that's harder to do. Okay. Tip of the tongue. So if you know something, but you just can't quite get it out. Oh, who was the actress who was in Hunger Games? Oh, I can't think of her name. I know who I see her face, I know her. I just can't think of her name. It's on the tip of my tongue. That's what we mean by that. It's like you know it, but you just can't quite get it out. It's there, but you can't get to it. All right, moving right along. All right, the feeling that you know someone's name, but cannot quite recall it is an example of, the answer is A. Ooh, this is a tough question. The material that an individual cannot remember but is on the tip of the tongue is what? The answer is, this is a tough one. It's there, it's available, but it's not accessible. I do not like this question. All right, write this down. What is perspective memory? It's task memory. But I want you to think of pro. What is pro? Pro means forward, or pro means future, like progress. Okay? Pro means future, as opposed to retro means past. Pro means forward. All right, so I've got a video for you to illustrate perspective memory.
Among parents. Last week, a Bay Area firefighter was charged with aggravated manslaughter after leaving his 2-year-old inside a hot car, leading to the child's death. Many question how a parent could forget their most precious possession. Fox 13's Anjali Davis is here with more from a USF scientist who says this is actually a tragedy that could happen to any of us. Anjali?
Well, Linda, this USF professor has studied forgotten baby syndrome at length for the past 12 years. He says the brain can easily go on autopilot and rely on routines to carry us through the day with very little thought ever involved. He says that's the dangerous time when these accidents traditionally happen.
There are lots of things we forget. We forget material objects. We forget appointments. But we don't forget our children in cars.
It's a thought process Professor David Diamond used to believe himself. But the USF psychology professor and memory scientist has changed his tune after extensive research into how the brain snaps into autopilot during everyday life.
We make these fatal memory errors when we say they shouldn't happen, but they actually happen quite often.
It's called suppression of perspective memory, when a routine overrides an out-of-the-norm activity in our day. It could be as simple as forgetting to stop at the store after work, or as serious as forgetting a quiet baby in the back seat.
They lose awareness that the sleeping child is in the back seat. And so they go through a routine that they've done many times before. When they get to their destination, because they've lost awareness of the child in the car, they exit the car, they go about their daily activities completely unaware that the child's in their car.
Diamond studied cases around the world and deemed a mistake of this magnitude could be made by anyone.
They're not negligent parents. These are people of all walks of life, educated as well as uneducated. These are professionals. These are doctors and lawyers, teachers, university professors.
In the Pinellas County case last Friday, that father is a firefighter who now faces manslaughter charges. While Diamond stresses,
okay, so forgetting your baby is sitting in the back of your car is a failure of perspective memory. Perspective memory is a future task, like remembering your computer charger cord is an example of perspective memory. All right, that's it. That's all I got on that. So try this one. The answer is perspective memory. All right. Okay, so you need to know the difference between retroactive interference and proactive interference. What you have here is a pretty good visual, in my opinion. So retro means back. Retroactive interference is when second period psychology interferes with your ability to remember first period economics. The arrow is going backwards, retro, back. So it's when new information gets in the way of old information. Now that you have a new phone number, you forgot your old phone number. Which that's not bad, but sometimes you want to remember old stuff, you know. You got a new combination to remember, so you forget your old combination. Proactive interference is the opposite. Pro means forward. Proactive is when first period psychology gets in the way of second period economics. Pro means forward. Old learning interferes with new learning. So on a timeline going left to right, pro means forward, future. Okay, draw that. Let's move on. So let's try some examples. I've used my locker combination for years. One day I had to learn a new one for just one day. Now I can't remember my old one. So the new is getting in the way of the old. Is that proactive or retroactive? That's retroactive. That's new getting in the way of the old. All right. I keep calling my new girlfriend by my old girlfriend's name. Ooh, ouch. So that's old getting in the way of the new. So that's proactive interference. Let's try a couple more. My Spanish class in the 8th grade is confusing my Italian class in the 10th grade. So you took Spanish in the 8th grade. Now you're taking Italian. Is it cucina or cocina? You know, you got to get that worked out, and they get in the way of each other. If old Spanish is getting in the way of new Italian, that would be proactive interference. I can't remember my teacher's name from last year because I keep thinking of my new teacher's name. That's new getting in the way of the old. That's retroactive interference. Okay. All right, let's try some. People have difficulty remembering recently learned new materials because of similar information learned earlier in life. People have difficulty remembering new because of similar information learned old stuff. Old get in the way of the new. So this would be A, proactive interference. Old get in the way of the new. All right, read that. The answer is old is getting in the way of the new. All right, read that. The answer is that's retroactive interference. New get in the way of the old. Retro, the arrow is going backward. Okay, draw this Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. Ebbinghaus, names are not that important on the AP exam, but I want you to at least be familiar with the forgetting curve. The forgetting curve basically means that you lose a lot of information rapidly, as you can see on this curve. Ebbinghaus was a memory scientist, and he would ask people to remember nonsense syllables. Okay? And people would forget them very quickly. And then there was a plateau where people still remember a little bit. And they still forget a little bit, but not as rapidly. This is called the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. Be familiar with that visual. So theoretically, everything that I teach you right now, you're going to forget it if you don't refresh your memory tomorrow or the next day. That's why I always try to review, and we do quizzes and things like that to fight the forgetting curve. And that's why I like to review, even if I don't always review. All right, write down the red. So based on science, we know that distributed practice is the best way to study material. If you want to really be hardcore and remember stuff, you want to be like valedictorian, study every night before you go to bed or around 7 p.m., study what you've learned that day. Go to sleep, get some dreaming, and then study it again the next day. And you don't even have to do it but for a few minutes. And everything would be so easy. You'd be like, why didn't I do this before? If you want to memorize something, you study it, you sleep, and then you study it again the next day. That's called distributed practice. Massed practice means cramming, like you study for 3 hours the night before the test. Now, I'm not saying that cramming is still better than not studying at all, but still, cramming is not as good as distributed practice. Massed practice is when you do it for a long time all at once, but it's better to do it a little bit by bit. That way you can dream and process your memories. That way, and it also reduces retroactive and proactive interference when you study over several days. Okay? All right. Just one more of the million things you need to know. Long-term potentiation. This simply means that it's about neurons making connections. Whenever you learn something new, the neurons in your brain connect with each other. Every neuron has about like 15,000 connections with other neurons. It's crazy how small it is. But the point is that, whenever this is about the biochemistry of memory. When we repeat ourselves in class, your neurons are making a connection. When I teach you about something and I make it relevant to some other aspect of your life, that is making a connection. And the more connections you make, the better. Okay? And when you learn, you got to make connections. All right, moving right along. All right, which of the following statements is true of Hermann Ebbinghaus in his research? Names are generally not that important in this class, but let's go ahead and do the question. Okay. The answer is he did the forgetting curve. The forgetting curve. Okay. All right. If mice lack an enzyme essential to the process of long-term potentiation, which of the following will be most likely consequence? All right. So long-term potentiation has to do with memory. So the answer is they won't be able to learn how to run a maze. They won't be able to remember it. All right. Source amnesia. I've actually seen this before on the test. So if you have something and you don't remember where you got it, and I mean like in your mind, like I heard this, but I don't remember where I heard it. That's what we mean by source amnesia. Okay. All right. And that's how some people end up in jail when they're innocent. People will testify against them and they'll end up going to jail when they were innocent. That is related. All right. So check this out. The answer is okay. All right. So you don't remember where you heard it from. That's called source amnesia. Moving right along. All right. Do this question. This is good stuff. All right. The answer is So remember, this is a sciencey question, and you need to learn how to read graphs. Distributed practice is more effective after a 1-week delay because it's just better. Distributed practice when you study several times in short bursts rather than cramming. Massed practice is cramming. All right, do this question. The answer is distributed practice. Okay. All right, moving right along. Okay, who is Elizabeth Loftus? Very interesting person. Make sure you write this down. Also, underline misinformation effect. That's important. Elizabeth Loftus is a memory consultant who I can imagine if you were ever a defense lawyer, you would use Elizabeth Loftus's research to call into question eyewitness testimony because she talks about how our memories suck. Misinformation effect, and she also talked about reconstructed memories, meaning that our memories can be contaminated. Okay, I got a video for you. This video is short.
One of the things that I and my colleagues did is to try to get people to remember that they met and shook hands with Bugs Bunny at Disneyland. This would be impossible because Bugs is a Warner Brothers character and wouldn't be allowed at Disney.
Okay.
Yeah. So how do we get people to believe that? We give them an ad to evaluate. So here's a fake ad for Disney, and you can see Disney in the castle, and there's Bugs. And they review the ad. They just tell us how much they like it. Do they like the colors? Do they like the layout? But later on, when we say, tell us about one of your childhood trips to Disney, which characters do you remember meeting? Do you remember meeting Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse, the Little Mermaid, Bugs Bunny? We will get lots of people to tell us they remember meeting Bugs. Oh. And then when they get pressed for details, they'll say they shook his hand, they'll say they touched his tail, they'll say he was eating, one said he was eating a carrot, one said, a few said he said...
So it becomes real.
It becomes real. They embellish it with detail, and it looks every bit like a real memory.
Yeah.
Even though it couldn't have happened.
So Elizabeth Loftus said that since our memories are so unreliable that we cannot always trust eyewitness testimony. Eyewitness testimony is when somebody gets on the stand and says, I saw the defendant here commit this crime. When in fact, sometimes people are wrong. And it's sad. There's so many innocent people in jail, and some of it's because of eyewitness testimony. Okay, watch this. It's a very short video. Okay, so memory scientists they asked a bunch of people how fast were the cars going when they collided with each other. And then they asked other people how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other. Then they asked other people how fast were the cars going when they bumped into each other, hit each other, contacted each other. And it turns out that the wording of the question affected people's recall. Okay? And it turns out, and here's the data, when you ask people how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other, it was almost 41 miles an hour. But how fast were the cars going when they contacted each other? It was just under 32 miles per hour. So the wording can affect recall and perception. So remember that when you're talking about eyewitness testimony. When you're a police officer and you're asking people to recall something, you don't want to pollute their memory. You just say, talk to me. Just be very vague. Don't say things like, did you see the gun? Just what did you see? You don't want to pollute. You don't want to pollute eyewitness testimony. All right, so try this question. The answer is the wording, just like I just mentioned about bumped and collided, stuff like that. All right, do this. All right, so this is called the misinformation effect. So you don't want to pollute people's memories. People's memories are malleable. Very scary stuff. All right, thank you very much.